I've done a lot in my life. I've never seen that at 9 o'clock in the morning. The team was pitching me like, it's going to be fine. I'm going to be like, no bull, is it going to be okay? They're like, yeah.
So, quick story, that's surprisingly normal in a Walmart culture. I'm racing home today because it's Associates Week for Walmart. We bring 5,000 associates from around the world to Bentonville once a year. And Friday, we will be in the big basketball arena at the University of Arkansas at 7 a.m. with this kind of thing going. So imagine intermixing this with like our CFO talking about how the company performed last year. It's quite the scene.
Anyway, an absolute pleasure to be here. Session 1 is all about inspiring action. And when I think about action, I think there's a few layers to that. There's a level of people, there's a level of decision-making and strategy. But below that, I think the foundation and the core is often going to be values. Walmart is the world's largest employer and one of the largest grant makers in the country and in the world. When you think about your values, when you think about your culture, is that really the foundation and the core of all the actions that you take?
Absolutely. So I know several people in the audience that have known them for years. You know that my background was all in nonprofits, and coming to the corporate sector was in many ways a surprise. And so I had expectations that culture and values wouldn't be as central, because particularly not around impact. And I found nothing further from the truth. The company was founded by Sam Walton with a shared value purpose.
Interesting.
This idea that people in the middle of the country and in small towns deserved access to affordable goods, not having to go to the city or pay more. And that's evolved over the years. Katrina is another moment where we had a wake-up call of all the assets we had as a company and their business strengths that could make a difference. And it's not long after that, Lee Scott, who was our CEO at the time, made a commitment to be 100% renewable, zero waste, and have products people could afford and be more sustainable. But part of that speech was saying, this won't be a sustainability team job. We will have one of those, but we will only be able to achieve the scale we have if it's everybody's job and it's part of our culture.
So building on that, at a company of your scale, there has to be challenges. How do you start with a centralized decision-making entity in Arkansas that then needs to roll that culture out and those values out globally?
Yeah. I mean, things like this morning and this week, our culture, I spend time with our CEO talking about culture all the time. He spends a huge amount of time talking about culture and values. It really is, how do we create systems, processes, and values so that people can live that way? So we talked about Katrina. When you walk into our home office, there's an artistic rendering of what was an AP photo of Walmart trucks. And it looks like just Walmart trucks, but it's the first trucks going into New Orleans after Katrina. They were there before FEMA, various things. And it's there because we talk about how do we show up as that company every day? And how is that everybody's job? And so there are these moments, the symbolism, it's embedded everywhere, and it's reinforced over and over again that, yes, my job may be every day 100% to impact, but impact is in everybody's job.
So we talked a little bit about values. Let's now maybe slide over to actions. Obviously, there's a lot of programs that you guys do, a lot of initiatives. Could you isolate a couple that either you're most proud of or you think are maybe more unique to Walmart?
Sure. So part of what keeps me here and gets me super excited is philanthropy is not a side project. Our model of philanthropy is to put a big problem that is relevant to the company in the center and think about all the levers we have to make change. The business model, because we actually believe our business is stronger by solving social and environmental problems, that shared value approach is deeply cultural. Philanthropy, convening, our policy, and we think of all of those as levers to work together to solve a system. So that means the issues we work on are things that you would be like, oh, of course Walmart works on that. Economic mobility and advancement for frontline workers. We call them associates. Sustainable value chains and supply chains. Local community resilience. We are in 90% of Americans live within 10 miles of a Walmart. So the resilience of a community matters. And those are the same issues for the company. And you can see the assets we have as a company to bring that as the philanthropy. So one example of that is the economic mobility work. This started just over a decade ago. And it started with the company making a big investment in wages, a total redesign of how we train. Retail's got this great asset in that it's got very few barriers to entry. That's a great starting place. But how do you make that a springboard? How do you make those frontline jobs, one, that are skill building, those skills are recognized and valued and promoted? We now train 400,000 associates with credentialable skills every year. 88% of our roles internally our next line roles are filled internally. The average timeline to promotion is 7 months. So we're really trying to do that as a company, and it's led to great corporate results, both for individuals and productivity, retention, these kinds of things. But we're also investing in it through philanthropy. Walmart.org is funding other companies to learn about this. We're funding quality short-term credentials, digital records that hold skills, because we believe the whole system will be better if we have a skills-based economy.
So a bit of a harder question. I'm sure there's critics out there, maybe even critics in this room, that look at Walmart and say something with your employees, you're not doing enough, or sustainability or supply chain. How do you address or answer critics? And I recognize that it's difficult both being in the business that you are, but also serving the community.
I think this is cultural too. So I actually get asked every year in my evaluation how much time I spent with critics. And it's this belief that they make us better, that really listening to people who have valid, thoughtful critiques will help us think differently and solve problems differently. And that is, to be asked that in your annual evaluation, like, did you spend enough time with people who disagree with us, is a really powerful symbol that this is important, and recognizing you aren't perfect and you've got a journey to go.
I want to call that out. I'm curious how many of your organizations measure as a KPI spending time with critics. Mel, my colleague, likes to say that feedback is a gift. As a corporation of this scale, acknowledging and welcoming critical feedback, I think, is a unique cultural point. Maybe pivoting to that, if you had a magic wand, what would you change? Difficult question.
Sure. I mean, there are always things, one of the things I'm kind of obsessed with is systems and how we get to systems change. And so really making sure that everybody sees systems and thinks about that, whether it's internal to the company or partners because even as large as Walmart is, we can't change the system alone. We can lead, we can make a big difference, but it's partnerships with our suppliers, partnerships with communities that really starts to galvanize systems change. And so having everybody focused on that, or at least part of our work, understanding that, seeing that, and finding the ways that we can shape systems in a way that benefit all.
Nice.
And it's less competitive and more mutually beneficial.
And maybe building on that, what's maybe a misconception that people have? When they think of Walmart, they assume A, but in reality, maybe the truth is something different.
Yeah, I think some of it is cultural.
Yeah.
It is a place where I find we bring in grantees and lots of people every year. And the closer they get to the company, the more they're like, oh, this is really different and authentic. I just talked to your chief merchant about sustainability, and she knew a ton, and this was not a new issue. There's not a business leader that I can put them in front of who's not thinking about this stuff, genuinely committed, and deeply believing it's their business strategy. So, for instance, in sustainability, I talked about our chief merchant working very closely with our global sourcing team, believes supply security for our future, which we need, rest on sourcing things thoughtfully that's good for people and planet. And so that's a different approach to the business that's very, very deeply embedded.
I like that. So here at the Social Innovation Summit, we think a lot about innovation, change, things that are new. I imagine Walmart, with the bureaucracy and infrastructure you have, when something new comes along, how do you accept it, evolve it, adapt it? That must be very difficult at the scale you're talking about.
I think there are two different ways I think about this. The first is, as big as we are, we have to stay focused. The issues I talked about, opportunity, sustainability, community, are not small. But, not taking on everything that comes to us. When I started, that was one of my first jobs, is to listen and kind of pick topics we would focus on. And understanding, we're the largest seller of bikes, we're the largest seller of diabetic touch strips. So everybody had a "you're the largest" pitch for me. But turning that on its head and thinking about what's really largest for us that we could leverage is one way, and then the other is our culture. And balancing that discipline with openness to doing it differently. So there's what do you do and how do you do it, and the how needs to change constantly.
Interesting. So I'm assuming a lot of people in this room have worked with Walmart, maybe would like to work with Walmart. Perhaps there's a nonprofit that's interested in your foundation, other funders, business partners, government. What advice do you have for the people that look at Walmart and are trying to think about how can we engage you systemically, culturally, or even personally to build a relationship?
Sure. So we have, two different ways we do this because we do value our local presence and the role we can play in local communities. Outside is a Spark Good table. This is one of the ways we've recognized we'll have many more partnerships than our team can directly impact. We have about 80,000 nonprofit partners on the Spark Good platform. This is our online, Walmart.com. We're doing things like store giving. We still make grants through all our stores. You can reserve the space in front of the store or club to meet customers, sell Girl Scout cookies, these kinds of things. You can now round up to your favorite charity when you check out. It's not one we pick. If you're registered as a nonprofit, you can have people round up at checkout. These are the kinds of services we're building, this ecosystem. If you have ideas of things you want us to build in that, we'd love, there's a QR code outside. If you want a grant, just register and apply for a grant. But if you have an idea of hey, could you build this and embed it here? Scan the QR code, share. We're always looking for what's the best next thing that would help. Our ideal in that program is a hyper-local nonprofit who doesn't have a lot of resources. What can we build that makes it easier for them to connect to their community?
Wonderful. So I think we're just at time. My last question. In the theme of inspiring action, we have an amazing group of people here. If there was an action that you would wish to inspire for them that either is built on your work at Walmart or even personally, what would be your wish for this amazing community?
Yeah, I think there's so much. I'm really excited about all the learning and innovation that's going on. I think sharing that, we're seeing people approach problems in really different ways. And that's both at the macro level with technology. Our grantees are experimenting with all kinds of edge computing, blockchain, AI, various things that's amazing and causing, but it's also hyper local. And the getting more proximate to those we're trying to help. It is a both and I'm excited to see how those intersect, and I want us to learn fast and together.
Wonderful. Well, on behalf of myself and the Social Innovation Summit, thank you so much. For those of you who may not know, there was a natural disaster that recently happened in Arkansas that really affected you and your colleagues and your team. We had a moment to hear about just the culture of how you reacted, how you responded, thinking of the community and your people, and it I think really demonstrated that your values, you walk the walk, you talk the talk. And so thank you for kicking us off and leading with values as we think about inspiring action. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.